Sorry about that.
That's okay. Could you mute yourself? Thanks. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on addressing blight proactively to favorably impact municipal budgets. Before we get started, I want to provide you with logistical information. Please make sure you can get online while we talk so you can access the visual component of the presentation. You should have received an email from me yesterday and again this morning in a calendar invite with instructions. First, click the Ready Talk link, enter your name, email address, and click Register, and you will be given access to the meeting. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please type them in using the chat feature on the lower left-hand screen, and we'll open up the line for discussion at the very end. Finally, the PowerPoint presentation will be sent out after the webinar. As you just noticed, we will be recording the webinar for listening to after as well. The Housing Alliance is proud of its work over the years helping to pass land blight legislation, which has provided valuable tools to communities across Pennsylvania. Our technical assistance and training team, made up of Winnie Branton, Chris Galata, and John Cromer, will be presenting today, and we'll discuss how these tools can help Act 47 communities. Thank you to our state partner in this effort. DCED has provided support for this work in the past, and we hope to continue in the future with our shared goal of ensuring healthy and vibrant communities. Let me begin by introducing our partner, Rick Villela, Executive Director of the Government Center for Local Government Services. Rick has served the Commonwealth in a variety of ways as a 4-term mayor of Lock Haven, 8 years on the State Planning Board, 8 years as the co-chair of the Governor's Rural Development Council, 12 years as the board of the Pennsylvania Municipal League, past president of the PA Municipal League, and 10 years as a board member of CEDACOG. It's my pleasure to start us off today by introducing Rick. Rick?
I'm excited about what we're doing today. When I got to DCD, my first Deputy Secretary was Joe Mead. He was very supportive of what the Housing Alliance is doing. And my new Deputy Secretary, Tony Payton, is also very supportive. So it's easy when these opportunities are presented to move forward. One of the programs that we implement through the Governor Center is the Act 47 program for distressed communities. In my background, I'm also a past building code official and owner of a third-party agency. So I know firsthand the code enforcement aspect of fighting blight. And during my years as mayor, I was always looking for a magic wand in City Hall. And I've often thought, you know, wouldn't it be nice if there was a reset button and you could start every new term or every so many years, start over. But, you know, none of our communities are the way they were built 100, 200 years ago. And one of the things, especially with our distressed communities, is when things start to fall behind, one of the aspects is code enforcement and blight and, you know, taking care of your housing stock and the assets that you have. So when the opportunity came to put this webinar together, one of the first steps that I wanted to take was to invite our recovery coordinators in to give them some more tools to help our neediest communities. And if we all pick up maybe one or two things today that we can start on, I'll think this hour or two has been successful. So I'd like to start out by introducing Mayor Matt Pacifico from Altoona. We've become friends through the Municipal League, and Altoona is a community that I keep an eye on because of that relationship and knowing council, and now with the 47 program, Altoona is, we often say, gets it. They're a community with strong leadership. They're a community that understood the Act 47 program. When they entered into it, they had some goals. They're meeting or exceeding those goals, and they're working their way through. So I'm happy Matt is part of today's presentation, and I'd like to introduce Mayor Matt Pacifico.
Thank you, Rick. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, actually. I was happy to be a part of this today and be asked to speak on some of the ways that Altoona has been working with the Housing Alliance to develop a land bank here. This started about a little over 2 years ago. I met with John Cromer to talk about the potential of creating a land bank here in Altoona, and we're expecting to wrap that up and have it created by the end of this year if everything goes as planned, which would be a huge relief because this is something that I'd like to get checked off of my to-do list. Because Altoona has few vacant houses, the initial reaction from some people was that a land bank would not be useful to us. But as we learned more, we realized that the land bank powers could help us with another issue, and that is the need to help ensure that responsible developers, rather than the speculators, had the best opportunity to acquire properties that were being auctioned at the tax sales. And that was my argument to the opponents of the land bank. You know, this just gives us another tool to fight blight. You wouldn't believe the complaints that I receive about properties, that with code complaints, and after I look into them, I see that they were purchased through the judicial sale. So, if we can make sure that responsible developers are getting these properties, they might have a chance to be saved rather than, somebody who thinks they're getting a property for, $2,000, not knowing what it's going to cost to bring it back up to codes, and then it just sits there for 3 years until it starts the process all over again. And then, by that point, 3 years later, it's a property that can't be saved and has to be torn down. The Housing Alliance helped us learn more about the land bank legislation and provided information about how other cities and counties have used land bank powers to deal with the problems similar to the ones that we're concerned with. And as a result of all of this, the city of Altoona and Blair County are currently working on a plan to create a county jurisdiction land bank that would be staffed by the city's redevelopment authority. And this was the biggest hurdle because if it was just going to be, Altoona's land bank, we could have had this wrapped up a year ago. But the county didn't show much interest in making it countywide, despite my best efforts to bug them constantly about making it countywide. But after meeting with some key people at the county, they realized how big this could be, not only for fighting blight, but also for rehabbing homes into affordable housing. And I know I've spoken with several members of council and managers from other municipalities throughout Blair County, and they're excited for this countywide land bank to get started because they also see how helpful this could be for their communities as well. So that's really all that I have for today, and I just want to thank the Housing Alliance for all the opportunities that they have given us, with tools and help and assistance. So thank you again.
This is John Cromer. I'm going to continue the presentation, and really the point of this presentation is just to underscore that blight strategies, when they're implemented proactively, number one, can be executed in the short term and produce results, sometimes in a single year, sometimes in a few years. So although the implementation of those strategies is different from, changing the parking fees on parking meters or municipal parking lots in terms of the speed of turnaround, there still are opportunities to move quickly and to implement new initiatives that make a difference. And you're all familiar with the Act and the focus of the Act on deteriorating economic conditions and threats to the city's tax base and ability to deliver public services. No question that uncollected property taxes, property abandonment, and reduced property values can be a big factor there. So that's really the point of all this. And I'm sure you're all aware of the provisions of the Act 47 that involve opportunities to change ordinances or rules and to make better use of Commonwealth resources. It's really noteworthy that Pennsylvania, during the last decade in particular, has instituted legislatively a number of changes in the legislation governing real estate transactions and the ownership and maintenance of property, and you'll hear about some of those things in more detail now. A lot of those powers have been underused in Pennsylvania, and so there are real opportunities to bring people at the municipal and local level up to speed on their ability to use powers that are already granted in the state legislation in order to deal with the blight problem. In addition, as I expect you're all aware, applications for assistance from an Act 47 municipality get priority consideration with respect to economic and community development programs. So that's certainly a plus in terms of complementing those strategies and making it possible to implement them. So there, in our experience, and I've participated in Act 47 implementation in the city of Reading and the city of Altoona and elsewhere, but there are opportunities to implement an approach for dealing with blight in parallel to the other Act 47 activities that involve, the city's financial management and other issues, which are really the core of Act 47. But just a couple of examples. The city of Reading really didn't have an organized property maintenance code enforcement division and was basically reactive to complaints about problems with existing properties. And during the Act 47 period, it instituted a citywide inspection program for rental properties in which certain staff members were assigned to do nothing but work in coordination with rental property owners and get those properties inspected and deal with compliance issues. And as you see from the slide, that program generated results, more than $500,000 in new revenues immediately, year one. In addition, as Mayor Pacifico mentioned, the city of Altoona is now working collaboratively with Blair County to establish a county jurisdiction land bank. And as the mayor indicated, and this is the experience elsewhere, when you start talking with people outside the central city, in the smaller townships and boroughs and villages, sometimes there's one property, but that one property is like at a key intersection, and it's a huge problem, and people are very frustrated about that. So the opportunity to use powers on a county-wide basis, even if in a particular village or borough you just need to deal with one property, can be very important. The other sort of opportunity that's related to this is because with respect to land banks and the other initiatives that you'll hear about, a number of cities and counties are already working on these or are already executing them. And so there's an opportunity, as Mayor Pacifico indicated, to learn from the experience of others and reduce the lead time. And that's a big plus. You can move quickly and get ready to implement quickly. And now I guess Chris or Winnie is going to talk about costs of land.
Hi, that's me. I'm Winnie Branton, and I want to spend a couple minutes just talking about the costs of blight. Expensive. Everybody can agree that the direct cost associated with blighted and vacant properties is significant, and it includes code enforcement, police, fire, maintenance, pest control. There have been a number of studies done that demonstrate what those costs can look like, and two of them highlighted here are one that was done by a group of 41 municipalities in Allegheny County's Mon Valley. It was through, at the time, there were 3 COGs working together, and they did a very significant study that showed that their municipalities were spending $10.7 million a year in direct costs that were attributed to blighted properties. A 2010 study of vacant land management in Philadelphia that was done by eConsult and other partners showed that the direct costs of the city were in excess of $20 million, and that there were a number of properties that were vacant and abandoned that were just leading to those kinds of costs. So blight costs money that is that can't be spent on other things that are required by municipalities. Let me go back. And the other part of this is that blight reduces municipal revenue. Uncollected taxes that John mentioned, the reduced property values and lost household wealth are all part of those monies that don't come into a land bank. So not only do you have to put money out, but you're also losing money that you could otherwise take in. That same TriCog study found that $16 to $19 million a year were lost in revenue, and that $8 million was lost due to a lack of economic development and reinvestment, plus $12 million in construction impacts, which was a one-time loss. So it's not just spending, but it's also a reduction of monies that you're taking in. And then when you look at these costs and the monies that you're losing, you think, okay, so what are some of the potential benefits of addressing blighted properties? And one of those is that you're eliminating the current costs or reducing them. What else would you gain by addressing the blighted properties? One study out of Detroit in 2015 found that the demolition of one blighted property increased the value of homes within 500 feet by an average of $1,100, an estimated 4.2%. So addressing blighted properties not only can reduce your costs, but it also can increase home values and increase the tax collections that you'll have for your municipality. The next slide talks about working smarter and some of the tools that are for effective and that are very effective and cost less to implement. The first thing we want to do is prioritize severely blighted properties that threaten health and safety. Actually, I think these slides are out of order. I think 8 is really the next one. And then I'll come back. Yeah, this is what I just spoke about, is blight hurts the bottom line. So if you look at this slide, you'll see some of the data that talks about what the properties could have generated had there not been these blighted properties. Okay. All right. So now when we look at some of the strategies that we're talking about, we want to talk about prioritizing severely blighted properties that threaten health and safety. Okay. And some of those include motivating owners to repair and maintain properties using low-cost strategies. That's the goal, right? You want to work smarter using tools that don't cost a lot and are effective. And some of those tools are set forth here, and they include a municipality's ability to deny permits to owners who have tax delinquency or code violations. Another one is an action to attach owners' assets beyond just the property. And a third is a conservatorship petition. And I'm going to talk briefly about those strategies.
Yeah, this is
Chris,
Chris
I think
Galata.
these slides are, yeah, go ahead.
Chris Galata here, and I'm going to cover this particular slide. The first step is assessing the nature and extent of the problem. Blight is really like any other public policy issue, like any other challenge affecting local government. The problem needs to be defined, and it needs to be defined correctly. If strategies are formulated without doing some good homework in advance, which involves assessing the nature and extent of the problem, you're going to have a mismatch between the strategies and the problem that you're trying to solve. So the point is that a data-driven approach focuses on the underlying problems to produce the most effective results. That approach may tell you that the problem is with related to blighted properties also relates to foreclosures. That analysis may tell you that the problem is centered around tax delinquent properties. This data-driven approach may tell you that the issue is really absentee owners and or rental housing. Maybe the data-driven approach tells you that it's all of the above. But the point is you're trying to define the problem correctly with this first step. And this involves capturing data on the characteristics and location of blighted properties and developing a blighted property database. And it also involves in mapping that information so that geographically you begin to display where these blighted properties are. And this is useful in formulating a targeted strategy because the frustration, I think, for many municipal governments, I do some work up in the coal regions in Northumberland County and Schuylkill County, the frustration is that blight is pretty extensive in some communities. And how do I get my arms around this, and how do I focus my efforts, at least initially, to have the most impact, to yield the most dividends to the local government in terms of increasing the tax base and reducing those municipal costs that Winnie just discussed. So in mapping this information, once you've done a survey of blighted properties and you have information on the characteristics of those properties, are they foreclosure properties? Are they renter-occupied? Are they, as I said, tax delinquent properties? And there are other characteristics that you'd want to collect, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But then mapping that information gives you the opportunity to be very strategic in terms of how you approach at least the initial steps. And those initial steps may be using these tools that Winnie discussed along gateway streets, where there may be a concentration of blighted properties, in neighborhood revitalization areas, possibly in the central business district. Then the next step is reaching consensus on the strategies to address blight. This is the logical next step in the process after a community has solid information on the nature and extent of the problem. I just want to call your attention to a publication that was produced by the Housing Alliance that I had a chance to contribute to. It's called the 5-Step Fast Track Approach to Developing a Blight Strategy. And that 5-step approach, you can see the link there, basically has those 5 steps are gaining consensus for developing a blight plan. Step 2 is assessing the nature and extent of blight, which I've talked about. Step 3 is convening a blight task force, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Step 4 is engaging municipal officials. And step 5, identifying priority action steps and implementing those steps. So this third step, which is the appointment of a task force. And I want to emphasize this is just one approach. The 5-step fast-track approach is just one approach to developing a blight strategy. But this approach involves the appointment of a task force that really should be appointed by elected officials in whatever jurisdiction is being studied, where the issue of blight is being studied. Then a series of meetings to evaluate the data on blighted properties and the various strategies for addressing blighted properties. This approach, by the way, has been used in Northumberland County, Clearfield County, and McKean County. And I think all of those counties can share good information with you about how taking that step and being very strategic in terms of approaching this issue of blight, first gaining consensus, and then looking at the data, that has yielded dividends for them in terms of, number one, being effective in their approaches, or more effective in their approaches than they had been initially. But number two, also accessing government funding, because they have the benefit of that planning document, and that document was the product of a consensus building exercise. And so funders are pleased to see that consensus. They're pleased to see a very deliberate approach to the development of strategies that are data-based, that are focused. So the goal of this process is essentially to select the right tools to address blight in that jurisdiction. So again, once the problem has been defined, and defined correctly, hopefully, to reflect the data, then this process begins to identify tools. The task force basically goes through a brainstorming process to identify tools that would be most effective to address blighted properties in that jurisdiction. Again, those tools will vary depending on what the nature and extent of blight is, which is why it's so important to define the problem correctly. So one size does not fit all. And what I mean by that, if you would look at the blight strategy document in McKean County, it would be very different in terms of strategies that are reflected in the Northumberland County document, because the problem in Northumberland County is different than McKean County. There are different characteristics of the problem. There are different causes of the problem, and therefore there should be different solutions. John, is this your slide? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, John Cromer again. One of the first things that can be explored are preventive measures, just being proactive about blight and dealing with problems and encouraging compliance or avoiding further problems rather than spending a lot of money dealing with the issue. Mayor Pacifico had mentioned individuals and other parties who acquire properties at the tax sale auctions, and this seems to be an increasing problem in every county. I've come across it in Mercer County as well as Berks County, but there's an opportunity for tax claim bureaus to, working in concert with municipalities, to disqualify certain parties from participating in the tax sales based on tax delinquency or city code violations or other factors. And the Tax Claim Bureau at the county level is the agency that does that. But in order to identify a party that has a problem, frequently information from the municipality is needed. So in Berks County, the Berks County Tax Claim Bureau works in coordination with the City of Reading to try to identify, to set up those criteria that will screen out certain participants in the tax sale. And if you go to the Berks County tax sale, you will hear affidavit numbers read off at the beginning of the sale, sometimes 24 of them, and those are the numbers of parties that are not allowed to participate in the sale because it's been found that they have been a source of problems in the past. In addition, the City of Reading's Redevelopment Authority has worked closely with the Tax Claim Bureau in acquiring properties through a tax sale law provision known as private sale, and that provides that for a tax claim bureau to sell to an individual party a property that has been already offered at the so-called upset sale, but has not yet been offered at the free and clear sale. Prior to the free and clear sale, there's an opportunity for the Tax Claim Bureau just to transact the sale of one of those properties with another party, which can be a private developer or, as in this case, a redevelopment authority. The conveyance of the property includes all of the liens that are associated with the property because the upset sale doesn't remove those liens. They're not removed until the free and clear sale. But frequently, a public agency or a developer that's working in concert with the city may have an opportunity to deal with those liens, either to get the taxing authorities to forgive them in advance or to negotiate a reduction in the lien amount, or to take other action to gain clear title. So this is a small thing, but progress frequently is made on an incremental basis, and it may be the case that one of those properties that is available through, for example, a private sale transaction is located in a target area that's important to a redevelopment authority or a nonprofit organization or a city. So this information can be very helpful. In addition, the proactive measures like rental property inspections can be very helpful in detecting problems before the property catches fire or the wall collapses or a hazardous situation develops. And when they're done in coordination with rental property owners, and when there's an understanding that there's a working relationship between the municipality and the responsible rental property owners, you can get this done efficiently and not make it a hardship to the investor owners. Some cities have instituted so-called point-of-sale inspections that are required in advance of a sale, just a walkthrough of a property to identify any health and safety issues that need to be corrected, not a full inspection of every little detail, but major health and safety issues. And then there's a requirement as a condition of finalizing the settlement and authorizing the settlement that those conditions be addressed either by the seller or through some agreement between the buyer and the seller. And that's helpful in that it ensures the public that the health and safety issues have been addressed as a condition of the transaction, but also the information that's made available prior to the completion of the transaction informs the prospective buyer about a problem that may not have been apparent previously, and that may affect the negotiations over the sale price. In either case, the issue gets addressed, the property is made safe if that's needed, and the transaction can be completed. This can be very, very helpful. And really, when a municipality is thinking about voluntary compliance and working relationships with the industry, you really can go a long way because the rental property owners who care about their investment want to see rational, reliable code enforcement, and where these working relationships exist can be very supportive. Initially, you will get an earful about all the problems that the city has caused and all the things that are wrong with the city's code enforcement process. You can get past that, and clearly the people in the private sector can be very helpful in offering advice about how to deal with those problems. So the underlying working relationship can really facilitate these initiatives and produce some good changes in the short term.
Hi, this is Winnie again. I want to go back to two of the tools that were mentioned in my earlier slide and just talk briefly about how municipalities might use those as inexpensive and effective measures to address blighted properties. The first one is permit denial under Act 90. And Act 90 allows the denying of permits to owners of tax delinquent properties or properties that have judgments for serious code violations. And if you recall John's discussion at the beginning of this, that one of the parts of the recovery plan should include recommendations for, or can include recommendations for, changes in municipal ordinances or rules. Well, one of the things that we've done through the Housing Alliance is assist municipalities with amending their property maintenance code and related ordinances to track state statutes like Act 90, so that it's clear that, and there's notice to all those involved, that if you are tax delinquent or you have serious code violations, that there's a possibility that the municipality is going to deny municipal permits to you. And that would include things like building permits, use and occupancy permits, and other zoning approvals. And this requires coordination and communication between municipal departments, but it's been effective at motivating owners to make improvements with little cost to municipalities that have used this strategy. The next strategy I want to talk about is conservatorship. And conservatorship is, has been the subject of a lot of discussion, especially in these past couple of weeks. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what that, that tool allows you to do. Through conservatorship, the court can appoint a third party to enter onto someone else's property and complete improvements needed to make it safe. And this past Monday, the City of Philadelphia held a hearing before City Council Committee on how the conservatorship is being implemented in Philadelphia. And in that context, I testified on behalf of the Housing Alliance, talking about how it's being used across Pennsylvania. And some interesting data was picked up during the hearing, and that is that in Philadelphia this year alone, so far, 69 petitions for conservatorship have been filed. In other parts of the Commonwealth, places like Shamokin and Cole Townships in Northumberland County, Center and Butler counties, and a number of other counties are using this tool to allow municipalities as well as neighborhood organizations and CDCs to take control of blighted properties and work through the rehab to bring it into compliance with code standards. And all of this is done under court supervision. And municipalities like this tool because it's cheaper and faster than eminent domain. And nonprofit developers like CDCs in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia like it because it can be quicker and more efficient in terms of getting their hands on the properties, getting the rehab done, and transferring the property to the hands of a new owner. So those are some of the benefits that were testified to before City Council, and the costs are a little bit more significant than the permit denial, but your conservator costs of completing the rehab and your attorney's fees as well as a developer's fee are all under the statute that authorizes these acts recoverable as part of the cost of the conservatorship when you go and eventually sell the property if that happens. Conservatorship also is a motivator. Many of these petitions result in the owner coming forward and making the necessary repairs to the property or negotiating the sale of the property to an interested party. So it works both as a tool to allow municipalities to take control of the property as well as motivating owners to take the property and put it back to productive use. And I just want to talk to you briefly about the experience in Northumberland County where Shamokin and Cole Townships joined forces with the Housing Authority to seek conservatorship of 13 blighted and abandoned properties owned by members of one family. And this one family had a long history of serious code violations and evading their legal responsibilities. And the court, after lots of attempts at service and the court deeming service to be complete, the court granted the petitions. Right now, all the structures on the properties were beyond repair and have been demolished. And right now the townships are advertising the properties for sale and expect that most of them will be acquired by adjacent property owners for side yards. And all of the bids on the properties are subject to court approval under the law. So there's examples across the state that you can find at the Housing Alliance's website, and also another publication, Blight to Bright, which is available on the Housing Alliance's site that they staff through DCED, which is the PABlightLibrary.com.
The other opportunity is to organize strategies so that they can be administered on a revenue-neutral basis, where the revenue that's associated with the collection of fees and fines and licenses is intended to be.
Hi, this is Joyce from the Housing Alliance. If everyone can mute their phone, if not, I'm going to have to mute all of them. Again, if you're not speaking, please mute your phone by doing *6.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
And one example is a practice that has been adopted in a number of cities in which so-called quality of life violations, nuisance code violations, weeds in the yard, rusting automobile parked in the backyard, appliances on the porch, trash not stored properly, can just be cited by issuing a ticket, like a parking ticket, and administered through a process similar to that which is used for parking tickets. That is, the ticket is issued on the spot. There's no going back to the office and sending out a violation notice and doing a reinspection and sending another notice. You just issue the ticket, which basically says you're guilty. You pay us, $25 within 10 days, and provides for an appeal process if that's desired. The appeal, though, is not to the judiciary, but to an administrative board, at City Hall. And the decision is made there. In the event that the property owner is not happy with that decision, then there's an opportunity to go to the courts. So this is helpful in a number of ways. It's easy to sort of divert the minor violations from the more critical health and safety code violations, and to deploy staff who will deal only with those violations and can do so more efficiently. In addition, as I indicated, the process is much more efficient. It's very quick, and also there's an opportunity to again try to encourage voluntary compliance, so that in some cities what's been done in introducing the program is simply issuing notices of violation that don't involve any fine, but says, we've started this program, and after we begin full implementation on, October 1st, this condition that's checked off would require payment of a $25 fine. There's a way to begin with a soft touch and to try to notify people in advance of what's going on, so that you can get the best chance of cooperation and compliance in the future. With regard to the revenue-neutral organization of the program, there's no guarantee that the fine and fee income is going to pay for all of the costs associated with the program. In some cases, it exceeds the administrative costs, and you've got to make adjustments. In other cases, it's not enough. But again, the goal is to try to achieve that status, and based on past experience, to plan accordingly so that you can administer a program that's as cost efficient as possible.
Yeah, this is Chris Galata again. I'm going to be talking about real estate abatement in relation to enhancing municipal revenues, and that idea of abating or phasing in taxes on improvements in your jurisdictions may seem counterintuitive. Part of your job as an Act 47 coordinator is to see the revenue base grow. But there are tools, programs like LRTA, and I think most of you, if not all of you, have heard about LRTA, And there's also a residential counterparts alerted that provide an incentive to improve properties in deteriorated areas. And one of the things I've found in my work throughout the Commonwealth, in my previous work as the Executive Director as a Redevelopment Authority, is that particularly in more developed municipalities where taxes are higher frequently than adjoining municipalities, or rural municipalities or adjoining municipalities, whether they're rural or suburban, there's a tax differential between those municipalities and those other areas. And someone who is looking to improve a property, let's say adding on a bedroom on the first floor or an additional bath on the first floor or a family room, all of which would have the effect of increasing the assessment on the property, and all of which would have the effect of increasing the tax levy on that property. The problem with that is it also has a chilling effect on people acquiring real estate, particularly owner occupants acquiring real estate in those communities. And what I found was that a lot of younger households are interested in buying in these communities, but feel that they are penalized if they make improvements that have the effect of increasing their taxes. So one way to offset this, to counteract this, if you will, is to think about programs that essentially phase in taxes on improvements in these areas. So the taxing jurisdictions are continuing to receive the same taxes they were getting before. It's just that the taxes on improvements, as a result of the assessment going up because of those improvements, those are phased in over a period of years. And that phase-in can be for up to 10 years. It could be as little as 3 years. It could be on a declining scale over that period, or it could be 100% each year for 3 years or whatever. But the enactment of these ordinances sends the message that the community is open for business and wants to attract private investment. Not only private investment in terms of business development, but again, private investment in terms of residential improvements as well. Again, that I think a lot of the houses, at least my experience has been, a lot of the houses in these communities are functionally obsolete, and there is work that needs to be done in terms of adding a room, adding a bathroom, basically redoing the floor plan so that the property works better for the new household that's moving in. And these are folks who are interested frequently in investing in a property, particularly if it's owner-occupied, but may have some reluctance to buy the property in that community, again, because of the feeling they're being penalized by improving that property and seeing the assessment increase. Winnie, is this your slide?
Winnie, are you with us? We can't hear you. Do *7 if you're muted.
Yeah, I had muted myself. Yeah, as Act 47 coordinators, your goal is to help municipalities improve the economic health of those communities. And as Mayor Pacifico mentioned, in Altoona, they're looking at a land bank as one of those ways that perhaps they can improve the economic health of their residential and commercial communities in Altoona. And in 2012, the legislature passed the land bank law. It's an optional, flexible, and revenue-neutral tool. And the land bank can be used as a tool for redevelopment of delinquent and underutilized properties. And for those of you who haven't attended any sessions or understand land banks, there's just a couple of basics that are set forth on the slide about what it is. It's a governmental entity created by ordinance. Its powers lie with its ability to extinguish liens and clear title and then convey to responsible new owners. There are limitations on the eligibility for creating land banks. It's counties and then municipalities with populations over 10,000, or joint groups can come together to form a land bank as well. And the beauty of a land bank is that it remediates blight by removing barriers that kept the property off the market. It can't create a market where one doesn't exist, though. So it doesn't do everything in terms of addressing blighted properties. It's not going to take care of all your problems. And it also requires some targeted and thoughtful acquisition in order to be effective. A land bank, too, can act as a start-to-finish hub for blight initiatives. That's where it would be quarterbacking your approach to blighted properties. In Pennsylvania, to date, we have 13 created land banks, and nationally there's about 120 of them. The legislation allows you to use existing resources to actually administer the land bank. And as Mayor Pacifico mentioned, the key power of a land bank is its ability to acquire tax delinquent properties at tax sale without competing with other bidders. And oftentimes, as Mayor Pacifico mentioned, the inexpensive properties offered through tax sale are purchased by speculators, and they sit on the properties and don't make the necessary improvements. A land bank can help to alleviate that cycle of vacancy. And the other point to mention here, because you're concerned with cost and adding a new government agency isn't necessary. It's really using the powers very efficiently and using the land bank as a transaction facilitator where you're matching up vacant and underutilized properties with willing and capable developers. There's also a Pennsylvania Land Bank resource guide that I had the pleasure of working on with the Housing Alliance, and you can find that too on the PABlightlibrary.com site. And now, how the Housing Alliance can help. Well, the Housing Alliance sees problem properties as untapped economic assets. And what the Housing Alliance can do is help you demonstrate how remediating blighted properties can improve the economic health of financially distressed municipalities. And through the comments by Rick and Mayor Pacifico at the beginning of the session, and the words of John and Chris and myself, you see that the Housing Alliance has a lot of experience dealing with these issues. So here are just some of the ways that the Housing Alliance can help. We can help you to draft anti-blight initiatives to be included in the recovery plan. We can assist with briefing the relevant and key stakeholders and players on the benefits of an anti-blight strategy as part of your plan. And we can also talk with local and county officials and governing bodies through presentations and briefings about the benefits of an anti-blight strategy. And then finally, we can provide training and technical assistance to managers and staff with implementation responsibilities. These are just some of the ways that the Housing Alliance can help Act 47 coordinators in your role of developing recovery plans for financially distressed municipalities in Pennsylvania.
Thank you so much, Winnie. This is Joyce with the Housing Alliance. I want to open it up now. Folks have what John, Winnie, and Chris just did usually would take many days, so I want to thank them for working many hours to pull a very tight and great presentation together. We will send out the PowerPoint after this and the recording probably early next week, but I wanted to open up for questions, or Rick, if you wanted to add anything.
I'm just really pleased. I hope this generates some discussion and we can generate some interest. But I think it's another tool that we all should consider.
And from the Housing Alliance perspective too, Winnie is going to be reaching out to folks to see if there are questions or interest in further work on this. So, do people have questions? I know it was a lot of information.
Yeah, actually, this is George from I'm the Act 47 coordinator with Braddock Borough, right outside of Pittsburgh. And one of the things that I've noticed about how Braddock has used its CDBG funds in the past is that they've knocked down a whole lot of houses. And so I guess I'm wondering how particularly land banks, but some of these other strategies could be used for vacant lots as opposed to vacant buildings.
Well, this is Chris Galata. One of the things that a land bank can do is organize what's called a side yard disposition program. Mm-hmm. There's some lots that simply are not large enough to build on, and one way to increase your tax revenues is by seeing those lots conveyed to the adjoining property owner, and presumably at that point they would be generating taxes again. But that whole process of organizing a program, it's again called a side lot disposition program. A lot of municipalities simply don't have the time to organize that well and basically communicate with adjoining property owners and handle the transaction of the sale to the adjoining property owner. There simply isn't enough time to do that. So land banks can be helpful in that regard. Where you have parcels that are large enough to build on, or where there are opportunities to assemble multiple parcels to do a larger project, maybe even a game changer project, I think land banks, particularly in jurisdictions that don't have strong redevelopment authorities, and there are areas throughout the state that, because of the precarious funding of redevelopment authorities are just not on the scene, or if they're on the scene, it's just on paper. They're not on the scene really, but they're on paper. So land bank can really, at that point, kind of step in the shoes of a redevelopment authority and look to deal with any brownfield issues, apply for grants to deal with any brownfield issues, and then go through an RFP process to actually sell that property to a prospective developer, in addition to doing some marketing of that property so that prospective developers know that the property is available for sale. But Winnie and John, any other thoughts?
The only thought I had, too, was I know in some municipalities where there are an abundance of vacant lots, they're looking to those for to satisfy some of their stormwater management requirements, because there are new requirements coming into play where municipalities have a greater obligation to address stormwater, and vacant lots are being used to satisfy that municipal obligation as well.
Gotcha. One, I guess, a related question that I was just thinking as you guys were following up, whether or not the tax abatements for improvements might be a strategy that would be worthwhile to at least think about for the marketing and sale of vacant properties, or vacant lots.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, the tax abatement, the phase-in of, and I think maybe this is what you're referring to, the phase-in of taxes on improvements. Mm-hmm. That can apply not just to the rehabilitation of properties, but new construction as well. And so in that situation, you're phasing in the total value of the improvement if you are working with a vacant parcel. Sure. You know, my recommendation in that situation is that you not go to a 10-year schedule. Maybe you use a 3-year schedule rather than 10 years. But yeah, that's a pretty important incentive that developers, I think, are looking for, and it actually gives you a competitive advantage over other communities. At least I found that.
Gotcha.
Anybody else? Well, that brings us to exactly 2 minutes of 1. So I just wanted to thank again our presenters, thank DCED, and we are available for follow-up questions, and we'll be in touch. Feel free. The contact information for all of us is on the screen, so please feel free to reach out, and we will reach out to you as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye now.